so I've decided for today to put on this shirt. Can you see what it is?
It's something with your running.
Yes, it is
Is
one
that
of the,
your New York Marathon shirt?
yeah, this is one of my New York Marathon shirts. This is from 2016, which is the last time I ran the New York Marathon.
How'd you do that time?
I won.
How many runners are there?
You know, I don't know how many there are this year. I mean, back
Well, in 2016.
50,000
And what place did you come in?
first. I beat them all.
Did you exceed your expectations?
Actually, that year I did
Wasn't that
not.
the year that we had to send the ambulance out to you somewhere in the Grand Concourse in the Bronx, I believe?
That was a rough one. That was my third one, and that was a rough one for a variety of reasons. It was not as enjoyable as the other two. I do want to do it again because I feel like I can't end on that note. The other two are much better than that
You'd
one.
rather end dying. The next one could kill you.
Good.
You didn't get younger in those 5 years.
Well, that's true. And that's, I feel like I'm a little bit, it's a little bit of a ticking, my biological clock is ticking.
Biological clock is ticking. Yeah.
It is. But then there's all these amazing stories of people in their 80s who are running it, and they run it every year. Anyway, so, you know, as I said, hopefully I'll get to do it again. But I thought I'd wear it because we're recording this. It is Marathon Week in New York. It's next Sunday. It's always the first Sunday in November. So in our last podcast, you shared how you uncovered some research showing that the most frequently used word in negative online reviews of businesses,
by a huge margin,
is disappointed. And that led us to a discussion about how important it is to understand how a business's customers or guests, how their expectations were met up or matched up with their experience. So whether expectations were met, exceeded, or not met.
Right.
And then we talked about how this has always been, for 17-ish years, the number one question, or the first question, I should say, that we ask in every customer and guest satisfaction survey we've done for every single client. It's always the first question.
Starts out with the expectations question.
Absolutely.
Right.
This sort of validates it, because disappointment is the word disappointed, or some form of disappointment, implies that you're measuring against something. And what are you measuring an experience against? You're measuring it against some expectations. And so during that conversation, you at one point, I think possibly kiddingly, possibly not, you actually said, maybe we could distill our service down to just that one question. And that would be enough for businesses to know just how the experience of their guests or customers matched up with their expectations.
Understanding your guests' expectations and if they were met or not is crucial to running your business and to having a successful business. Because theoretically, if you see that you're trending down in meeting expectations, you've got something to look into. You have an issue.
Yeah, I mean, I just found it very interesting that you said that. And certainly if you were stranded on the old question, if you were stranded on a desert island, what's the one thing you would bring? It's almost like, if you could only ask one question of your customers or guests, would that be the question you ask?
Right.
And
there's an argument that it would be.
Yeah, I mean, there's an argument also to be made from a competing metric out there, namely Net Promoter Score. They always say that the one question that you need to ask, and they've been saying this now for 18 years, I think it is. They've been saying that the question to ask is, how likely they're asking each customer or guest, how likely are you to recommend?
Right.
And I don't know about that.
That's
Anyway, so I'm going to put up on the screen now. But let's
Oh.
say that the question that somebody is going to ask is experience versus expectation. How did your experience meet with your expectations before walking in the door, say for a brick and mortar business? So we'll use the example of a hotel because a lot of our business is in that space. So up on the screen now is a piece of a report that our that our clients see in their online dashboard for survey results. And we talked about it a little bit last week, and it's basically a pie chart. So there's 3 slices, if you will, to the pie. And I'm showing this is an actual client of ours, and it's past 30 days worth of surveys. And you can see that the met slice is half of the pie. So they've met expectations of half their guests. They've exceeded the expectations of 42.5% of their guests. And they did not meet the expectations of 7.5%. Again, going to that exercise of if this is the only thing you're going to look at, and I'm looking at this pie chart as a business operator, manager, general manager of a hotel, owner, somebody responsible for driving business forward. What am I going to take out of this pie chart? Well, I think that the first thing you should be looking at in a snapshot view today, as well as tracking over time, is the did not meet slice, 7.5% in this case. And the main thing you want to make sure happens is that slice stays as close to 0 as possible. If it starts trending up, you got to dig into why. And obviously, as we've talked about, the balance of our guest satisfaction surveys tries to get at that with more detail.
Right.
So before we come back to that in a second, I wanted to talk about the other 2 slices, the met slice and the exceeded slice. So we have always said, and we talked about it a little bit in the last episode, that it's okay that half of the people in this particular instance, your expectations are met. We kind of look at these as together. So in this case, 92.5% of this hotel's guests were either their expectations were either met or exceeded. That's a good number, right?
Yeah.
Exceeded, we've talked about, if you're exceeding expectations all the time, there's a couple of things that can go into that. There's one other thing that we haven't really talked about regarding expectations, and that's how does price figure into it? It probably doesn't factor as much into the met expectation slice. Probably it affects who goes into the exceeded and who goes into the did not meet slice more.
Right.
So let's say somebody got a great deal on a hotel. There's all these booking engines that are trying to sell unused rooms, and you got an unbelievable deal on something, and you didn't really know you were doing it based on price, and maybe you paid a ridiculously low number, and that colors your expectation going in. And so the lower the price, more often than not, you can exceed expectations in that.
Right.
And conversely, if somebody is paying full boat, if they're paying premium prices in the middle of Christmas week for a resort, and it's the prices are 3 times what they normally are or what they are other times of the year, their expectations are going to be much, much, much higher. And then there's just one other thing that I did want to mention as far as expectations, and that is, so let's say you find, or a business finds, let's use this hotel in particular, let's say that over time, that did not meet slice gets larger, right? It goes up from 7.5% now, and 3 months from now it goes up to 20%. So what could be happening here? Well, there could be a service drop off within the hotel. The physical plant or the rooms could start being shabby and deteriorating. That could cause it. Again, like we just talked about,
I was just gonna say, you could have raised your prices.
right, could have raised your prices. There's a bunch of things that can be going on. And then there's another thing, and it all ties in together. Not everybody is a good fit for every product or service or hotel or restaurant. We talk about marketing personas these days, that who are your ideal customers? What are they like? And, going back years and years ago, it would be only demographics that you would look at. Now there's a lot more interconnectivity.
You can identify traits of a particular customer in much more depth than just demographics.
Yes. Yeah.
And
These
the
days,
secret is filling your business, in our case, a lot of hotels, with your customer.
right. So it's possible that the increase in the did not meet expectations slice
Because you have a lot of customers that are not typically your type of customer.
right. You may be attracting the wrong type of customer. For some reason, whether it's a pricing decision, whether it's a marketing decision.
Sometimes it's strictly a business decision. You want to, if talking about a hotel, I have had this conversation with many people. I want to fill up my rooms. I want to sell my rooms. I can't. By the middle of the day, if I can fill up my room tonight or tomorrow, just do it. I'm just going to do it, period. And if it turns out it's not my customer, so be it. It's a weight. There's a fine line.
It is a trade-off. It is a trade-off, especially in this day and age. If you go back 10 years ago, certainly 20 years ago, that trade-off didn't exist, because the negative possible impact of attracting the wrong customer or the wrong guest to your hotel wouldn't necessarily show up in an online review.
Right.
But now it will. Right. Now it could, I should say. It doesn't necessarily mean that it will, but it could. You just have to be careful, again, about talking about trends. If we're looking at the 7.5% of the guests whose expectations are not being met, if that number goes up to, say, 20% and continues to, or hovers around 20%, or even creeps up above that over time, there's things you have to look into. And again, it's things that are internal, but it's also possible that you're attracting the wrong people there. And, yes, price is obviously a variable in that as well. Right. So just wanted to put a neat bow on the expectations versus experience discussion that we started last week, or last episode. It was 2 weeks ago, actually. And we will go on to other metrics in our next episode. We talked a little bit about Net Promoter Score today. We'll get into that again. We'll talk more about fan value score. Expectation obviously is a part of that. All right, so more on net metrics next time. And I guess that's it for today, huh?
Okie doke.
Thanks everybody for listening, for watching.
Thanks for listening.